Bart, before we start talking about the performance of your funds, can you just refresh my mind a little bit about the so-called human capital factor that you've derived and how it solves problems for financial advisors?
Sure, Greg. So the human capital factor is a new investment factor, like value, growth, or momentum. We have quantified the connection between how companies treat their people and future equity performance. It's been verified by JP Morgan. They've written 5 research reports on the human capital factor. And as you mentioned, we have now made it investable. We've launched 3 indexes, a large cap, a small cap, and an unconstrained, that have then been turned into ETFs by our partner Harbor Capital that you can find on the New York Stock Exchange.
So to dig a little bit deeper, you rate companies and you publish those, and private equity firms as well. Can you talk about that?
That's exactly right. So once we established this connection, we realized we could bring it to individual businesses through a rating system. So we've launched the Human Capital Factor rating system. It allows an individual company to benchmark how they treat their people against 4,000 companies in our database and benchmark it across demographics, right? Across gender, department, division, geography, seniority, and understand where their corporate culture might be misaligned with future equity performance.
And you could do this for private companies as well, right?
Absolutely.
How does that work?
Absolutely. And so one of the JP Morgan reports evaluated whether the human capital factor worked across industries and across market cap sizes. And indeed, you found a connection across all companies. And so we now offer this direct to individual companies and also through private equity. And so private equity is using it as a diligence tool and as a monitoring and management tool for their portfolio.
Okay, so now we know what you do and who you do it for. So tell me if it works for your ETFs. Are they outperforming the indexes? Which indexes do you match them up to?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have 3, large cap, small cap, and unconstrained. Let's focus on the large cap. The Harbor Capital product is called HAPI. And when JP Morgan started to write out this, they went back 14 years. And Greg, they found that every year they had seen outperformance, somewhere between 3 to 6%. They found an average of around 4%. Right now, both our large cap and our small cap are beating the bench just like the last 14 years. We're about 100 basis points above the bench, the large caps benchmarked against the S&P 500.
And does it do better or worse during a volatile market like the ones we're having now? You know, why is this a good time to go out and buy it?
Yeah. So in the analysis, we looked at whether this had any correlation with volatility or geopolitical stability. And what's fascinating is that indeed the human capital factor outperforms independent of whether you have a rising or falling VIX, whether you have a rising or falling geopolitical instability. And so it's unlike those other investment factors that the outperformance is utterly persistent.
And then finally, how does it fit into a diversified portfolio? Are you kicking out your index funds to put in your irrational capital funds?
Yeah, so that large cap is an S&P 500 replacement strategy. The way that we create the portfolio is we take the 500 S&P stocks, we take the top 150 on the human capital factor score, and then we industry sector weight and market cap weight. And as a result, you have a 99% correlation with the S&P 500, but you have exposure to all the outperformance through those highly motivated employees.
All right, well, thanks a lot for coming on and talking about it.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Nice to meet you.